Welcome to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for joining us. When it comes to homeless services in our area, gone are the days of the one homeless shelter on Record Street. Now there's a big main shelter, plus tiny homes, plus dorm-style housing, plus safe camping, and the list goes on. But are all those options meeting the need? Travis Sandifer with Volunteers of America and Ryan Gustafson with Washoe County are both here with me to talk about that. Thank you both so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is a big issue, and it's one that's been really interesting to cover over the many years because we've really seen such an evolution in all the services that are offered and then how they all kind of came together under one umbrella. For those who don't deal with this on the regular, maybe have no idea what we even offer, can you guys break it down for us? What is out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I can start and then
Sure.
hand it over to Ryan. So a full spectrum from street outreach to shelter services to housing, right? And so we have the Nevada Cares Campus, which is a 549 bed shelter with winter overflow. You have the pods, which used to be the safe camping for another 50 units. We have the women and family shelter. And then across the street, you have dormitory style housing there at the Village on Sage Street, which is 316 units of affordable housing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite a bit.
Yeah, quite a bit.
And a lot of different types of housing to kind of meet people where they are and specifically what they need in order to get back on their feet, right? That's the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a robust continuum of care where you have services that might look like in the Sprung, that's the big tent shelter. We call it the Sprung. So whether you're in there for a short period of time or whether or not we're getting you into affordable housing, and then we can follow up with case management or perhaps mental health services or primary health care services. I think having all of those and all of that service array put into place is really what's important for us as a community, us as a county, to be able to serve the need.
Yeah, and I mean, huge difference from the picture we had just 5 years ago. The fact that all of this pretty much came together within the last 5 years is pretty wild.
Unprecedented. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Considering we're one of the biggest shelters we have now one of the biggest shelters on the West Coast, and I would say probably somewhat of a model for other communities that have come and asked for tours, taken a look at what we're doing, seeing what that continuum looks like. Certainly, we've tried to stay in front of assessing what that need is, and hence all of those services coming together, putting together a very large shelter that not only serves individuals, but now families, women, children as well.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of meeting the need, let's talk about the need itself. I've been here a while, but when I started working in news, recession era times, I remember covering the tent city that had popped up outside of the Record Street shelter. Now, fast forward to today, are we dealing with that level of numbers, more numbers as our population has grown? What are we looking at now?
I think the need is, and this is not just local or specific to our community, I think nationally this is an issue, but certainly within Washoe County, I do think that we've seen an increased need over the years, and I think that's for a variety of reasons, whether that be the job market, the housing market, livable wages, substance abuse issues, mental health issues. I think there's just a variety of factors that really come into play. So I do think that the need has grown in our community over the last really several years. I mean, and probably decades, quite honestly, but certainly in the last several years, we've seen an increased need when it comes to services, when it comes to shelter services, and everything that comes along with that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. So, I mean, when you look at the scale and the magnitude of what we're looking at, like I always tell people, this isn't my father's era of homelessness. I mean, it's just on a whole nother level, and I think that's where our community is fortunate and is ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're part of a national organization. We're a local affiliate, a local nonprofit, but I get to look at what the other communities are doing, and so many of them have fallen so far behind. because the magnitude of the challenge is so much bigger.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it wasn't that long ago that the prevailing feeling about this was, what do we even do? Because there's so much and it feels overwhelming, especially when it isn't like a one-size-fits-all solution. Has the face of homelessness changed, would you say? Is it a different person finding themselves in the situation, or is it same kind of story? What are we looking at?
That's a good question. I think it evolves over time. Just working in human services in general, I see that with children and families as well. But with homelessness, I do think we've seen an evolution of the community. But one thing that we saw on the front end is to be able to address these issues, you need to understand what the issues are. And so we got really in front of the data piece of it. How do you address the elephant in the room if you don't know if there's one or more elephants in the room? And so we've done a really good job of working with Built for Zero, of coming up with a data system, getting the community involved in entering data into the system that we have, to where we can actually have an accurate count of what the numbers look like, where people are coming from, are they staying in the shelter, how long is it taking folks to get out of the shelter and get into permanent housing. So that is really the biggest piece, and I don't think that we had necessarily done that so well if you're talking 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I don't know that we were measuring things. So it's hard to say exactly what the problem had looked like before. For us, it's more, how do we get in front of it now? I do think that there's certainly issues that are newer to this century than perhaps before. We've got a bit of a fentanyl crisis. There's other substances in the community that have certainly had an impact. We've seen the housing market, as far as costs go up, availability go down. So it's an expensive place to live in northern Nevada. Travis?
Yeah. So it's hard to put a face to homelessness. I mean, one of our shelter directors describes it as like this hourglass. There's so many different pathways in, and then you kind of catch them all in the shelter, and then there's different pathways out. But I think one of the consistent themes that we're starting to see is the demographic change. We're seeing a lot more seniors. And so that's very concerning to me, looking out 5-10 years. These are individuals that already have complex mental health, physical challenges, and they're aging. Like, this is not a population that meets kind of that traditional mindset. So we have to get in front of that part of the challenge. And to give you some context for that, so if you're unhoused, you already have a 3.5 times higher mortality rate. It takes 20 years off your life. And so if you're in your 50s and you're unhoused, that you are really in a different state. And I just need for people to understand that if you walk the shelter and you look at the face of that senior, of which we have about 50% of our population is seniors now, it's a very different look than I think, and again, we didn't necessarily have the data, than I think what you would have seen 30, 40 years ago.
And this is a different story too when we're talking about solutions, because the old adage of like, I'll get a job, like, you gonna say that to a senior? I mean, it's fully possible. I'd imagine that in a lot of these situations they were living on a fixed income and it wasn't enough. One major health situation that comes along and wipes out their savings and their Social Security isn't enough to make rent. And we're seeing that. I mean, I hear these stories all the time, people emailing the newsroom about how their rent's going up 200%. They can't afford it on a fixed income. Are these the people, you think, who are ending up?
Certainly a big percentage of them now are those individuals. And I think the solutions, and we're going to have to change how we approach it and how we talk about it, because that looks very different. To your point, go get a job. That's a very different discussion, a very different mindset when you're talking about seniors. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I agree. And within Washoe County, we have a senior services program as well. And it was actually one of the reasons that we had Housing and Homeless Services merge in with the rest of the Human Services Agency, is because there was so much crossover from kids who are aging out into adulthood and also the senior population. And one other issue that we have certainly seen that with seniors that's a challenge is they tend to be more isolated as well. They don't necessarily reach out for assistance as much as some of the other demographics that we have. And one of our big goals is to get the senior population to get involved, to have those social contacts, and that's something that tends to fall by the wayside. And I think that when you then put that variable of homelessness or the potential for homelessness into that, I think that that makes the problem far worse. That isolating issue with seniors, when you add homelessness on top of that, it becomes a real significant challenge, not just from the mental health standpoint, but from the physical standpoint as well.
Yeah. So we're looking then, here's our need here, here's our services that we have available, beds we have available. How big is the gap from need to meeting the need?
I think that the gap varies depending on a number of variables. One of the big ones that is probably obvious to everybody is the weather. As soon as the winter rolls in, all of a sudden the amount of available beds we have goes down. I think another big thing that we do and want to do, and really one of our big metrics, is how fast can we get people who come into shelter services, how fast can we get them back on their feet, whether that go into affordable housing or employed, or get them back just resourced up. And since 2023, we've been able to get about 1,400, a little more than 1,400 individuals sort of through the system and back on their feet. And that's a really important metric for us. And so that churn's really important because we want to have beds for folks. And so having, as Travis had said earlier, having 549 beds in the tent, the Sprung, and another 50 in Safe Camp, and then another 150 or more over at the Our Place Center, it serves a substantial need, but it does not fill all of the gaps that we have. There's certainly more. We need more resources. We certainly need more beds in the community, and probably far and foremost, we need more affordable housing. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree on the housing piece in particular, but I mean, really at some point, particularly around that permanent supportive housing, which is for people with the most complex mental health and physical needs, there just simply aren't enough of those units on the other side for the throughput, but certainly trying to reduce that time in the shelter is all of ours goal.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's a great opportunity for us to take a quick break, because coming up on Face the State, I will be back with Ryan and Travis to talk about some solutions to our region's homelessness problem. Stay with us.